Hello and welcome to El Pozo, the Primera RFEF show. I'm Nick Bell, your host for this evening, fresh and dandy, back from his holidays and not sort of coming through to you of the medium of a BV wave radio like I was last week. Hopefully loud and clear this time, which was quite amusing. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Liam, my co-host once again, who is also fresh back from a trip to Spain. Liam, how have you been?
Yes, I've been busy, I suppose. I saw 4 games this weekend in little more than 24 hours. Sadly, none of them Primera RFEF. The only one I could really get to was some Tarazona, and it was on at the same time as Real Zaragoza. As a Real Zaragoza fan, I promised myself a last trip to La Romareda before they completely knock it down. So couldn't make that one. So it's a bit gutted overall, to be honest. But yeah, busy, very enjoyable, quite a few miles on the clock, but all good.
Yes, it sounded absolutely delightful. I know you were there with friend of the podcast Matt Harrison as well, who treated himself for a trip to Huesca. So no one was getting any Primera RFEF football this weekend, though. I believe I shared with you, didn't I, some of the tandem watching I was doing with myself and my daughter. Whilst I was watching Primera RFEF on the laptop, she was watching Princess Diaries. We had on many other kids' films as well. So we had a delightful little Saturday cinema day between the two of us. And at one point, I'm fairly certain that she was even watching Ceuta against Real Murcia as well, which I think is good education for 7-year-olds in my book, Liam. As you as an educator as well, I'm sure you'll agree.
Absolutely so, indeed. And I think that's if she were going to watch any game over the weekend, that was the one to watch, wasn't it? Really, regardless of what went on the crowd and everything. A big occasion. Fantastic that she was at least in the vicinity of that game, and maybe she'll become in due course.
Exactly. More to come on that later. But just to catch us up on some latest news from Primera RFEF and a big story that's happened in the last 48 hours, Liam. And it's happening down in Extremadura. It's in the city of Merida. We have said, we are fans of what they are doing down there, and they are playing some fantastic football on the pitch. They are producing some lovely graphics and social media stuff off the pitch. But it sounds like they're about to hit a new level, because it came out yesterday that Matthew Benham, he is the owner of Brentford FC in the Premier League, was interested in buying Merida at the moment. He basically, it sounded like we were kicking off with some rumours, and then it really, really snowballed into negotiations are happening in Madrid, and then even turned into the Brentford chairman turning up at Merida train station and meeting the mayor this morning. It's been a wild 48 hours if you're a Merida fan, hasn't it, Liam?
Absolutely so, and it's fair play to these negotiations, which we're told have gone on for a number of months. Just they kept them very, very quiet, didn't they? Really, because we had not an inkling of this. And you say we went from possible interest in buying Merida to announcing this afternoon that they had done so, all in the space of less than 24 hours, I think it was. So it's a mad. Yeah, Cliff Crown is is going to be the new chairman there. I think Matthew Benham has bought the entire club, 100% ownership he's going to have of it. He's bought it under the name of Best Intentions Analytics Limited, but that is him. It's his company. He's bought it off an English-American current owner who is Mark Heffernan. And this is a really exciting time, isn't it, for Merida as a club? And I can understand some of the comments coming out early on was sort of obviously going to be a little bit wary, because we know that in Spain, as in England, there are a number of sort of rogue owners that have brought clubs to their knees. And of course, Merida have lost 2 clubs in the past. Two clubs have been liquidated in that city. So clearly, a new owner coming in is always going to cause some concern. But obviously, the sense is that he is to a certain extent building on what Mark Heffernan has done in terms of his approach to recruitment and everything. So this is just a continuation with somebody who, to be honest, has just got deeper pockets. And obviously, everything that Matthew Benham has done at Brentford looks amazing, doesn't it, really? And I think the thing I've been trying to reassure Merida fans about, who've been reaching out on social media, is, look, this is a guy who loves his football, isn't it, Nick? He really does. He's a fan. Of course, he's a businessman. Of course, he's going to be looking at, what the pluses are for him. But he is also a big fan of football. And I think they're in safe hands with him, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was, I was pleased to hear as well that he's seemingly selected this club because it's already has this data analysis approach, which he's famed for. He obviously, has this buy low and sell high philosophy, which has paid dividends to see Brentford go from mid-table League One when he took over, all the way to the Premier League, and now on the cusp of European football. So, and as you said, there's obviously going to be give and takes with this, and in this whole Brexit world we live in, more English-based owners are looking for clubs abroad to be launch pads for talent to get them into the EU. But for Merida fans, this is a guy who, as you said, loves his football and will more importantly respect the culture and the community of Merida as well. It's quite a unique place to go and buy a football club, really. There were probably loads of other places he could have gone to, Liam, but I think he's picked a really, diamond in the rough a little bit with Merida, in my personal opinion.
Totally agree. I think the potential there is huge, isn't it? It's an area where there aren't a huge number of people. Of course, population in Extremadura is quite low compared to some other parts of Spain, but there is quite a potential catchment area there, isn't it? And they're already doing very well. I mean, we said, I think on the last show they had over 6,000 there for a game last weekend, which was the highest attendance they'd ever had in Primera RFEF. So this is a club that's on the up. He's bought it at a great time, well, presumably. Well, they're still in Primera Federación. He's not had to pay quite so much for it. It could well be that by August they're actually a Segunda side, and that's when some serious money starts to come away. Although not as much, of course, as the riches of La Liga. So yeah, I think it's a really good investment from him. I think it's a smart investment from him, and I think there'll be a lot of upside for Merida. There is that potential, of course. Nobody really comfortable, do they, with the idea of being used as a farm club? Why would you? But if you're going to get some of Brentford's most talented players, or not even their players, but players that they've scouted from other parts of Europe, in your team, I think there has to be a good way forward for Merida. So very exciting times, and I would expect this to go very well for them, as long as they don't necessarily expect Matthew Benham to deliver a league of football within 5 or 6 years. It doesn't always work out like that, does it?
Yeah, if there's one thing I can probably praise Merida fans on having, it's a good sense of reality is probably the way to describe things for them, given everything that they've been through in the last 2 decades. So, interesting news in Merida. Some other interesting news that you pointed my way this week, Liam, is that we may be looking to get FVS introduced into Primera REF next season, which is football video support. Now, not to confuse things, this isn't VAR, but a kind of a VAR light. You sent me a picture today of a glaringly massive offside decision that went against Gimnastica Segovia. Is this what Primera needs? Is it something that we're excited about, or does this dilute the product that we actually already love?
It's a really tricky one to call, isn't it, really? I mean, I don't have a totally clear understanding of it. I understand that Hawkeye technology is involved, so that's going to be something to do with, the ball over the line or not going over the line. We're not clear exactly what it's going to be used for. All we know is that it's essentially not going to involve a booth with referees sitting in it. It's going to be something that the match official can consult. But it won't necessarily mean that that they won't. I don't think you'll have the full gamut of possible uses that we have with VAR. But that will be clarified in due course. It might not be introduced, but I suspect it will be. The RFEF have asked FIFA if they may do so. I can't see why FIFA would say no. It's a really hard one to call. I do quite like watching Primera RF and knowing that there's not going to be any delays, endless delays that happen in other levels of football. But there are some glaring mistakes, aren't there, being made at the moment, which I would think that any sort of support system could iron out to a certain extent. What do you think? I mean, it's kind of it's a roundabouts, isn't it? Really, it's 6-2-3s. Really, is a good thing or not?
It's the difference to me. It's one of the reasons why I like Primera REF football. It's one of the reasons why I like, EFL football in England as well, is that you don't have this this pressure, these delays, the technology maybe being a bit too good, if anything. If someone's got an elbow offside and you're being pulled back for it, I just think, honestly, get in the bin. It's not up for me. But, I suppose when we're talking about the levels of finance that we see between Primera REF and Segunda, you sometimes are playing with people's livelihoods, really, and clubs' futures. So, if those margins are narrowed, then it can probably be a good thing. And the fact it's a lighter version of, we might not see as much inference from VAR. as we do in, say, the Spanish Segunda, where sometimes you can be waiting 3 minutes for a decision to be made. So, yeah, I am VAR, or what's it called, FVS agnostic at the moment. I'm waiting. I will wait to see what happens with that first and foremost. Something that I'm not agnostic about, and I can't be agnostic about, is the tale of Vicente Mir, who left Alcoy on the weekend during his press conference. Liam, I know we both watched this and shared this online, but basically at the end of that 4-2 loss to Fuenlabrada, he'd had enough, hadn't he? He just decided that it wasn't for him anymore.
Yeah, he basically talked about the fact that he didn't mind the fans saying leave. That this "Vete ya" chant that you often hear in Spanish football, like just go and get lost, basically. Mir vete ya. It's okay if they say that, but they took it too far after that. Listen, he's won 3, drawn 3, and lost 8 since he came in just after Christmas. I could understand when the fans are fed up. And of course, the problem is at this level with Primera RFEF, we aren't talking about 50,000 people, are we? We're talking about maybe 1,500 to 2,000 people. And so people making really unsavory comments will be very clearly heard in the bench. And he just said, basically, there's more to life than this. I want to be happy in life. I'm sure this group of players is good enough to get us out of the mess we're in. But, people don't want me here, so I'm going. You could argue that he said that, he jumped before he was pushed. But yeah, there's a certain amount of integrity involved in that, I suppose. He presumably would be entitled to some sort of payoff if he'd stayed in his job and been sacked. I think his days were numbered. But ultimately, yeah, he'd had enough. And he, as you say, left during the press conference, which I think is quite unusual. And I don't find it amusing, obviously, because it's not amusing for Alcoyana fans, but it's certainly relatively unique, I would suggest.
Yeah, for usually with the grace and decorum that can be afforded in Spanish football when it comes to managerial changes, they do happen often, but it's usually done with a sense of thank you, gracia, on your way type thing. Whereas this was very much against the pale for me. But I suppose from an Alcoyano perspective, they are in deep trouble at the moment, and maybe they do need a change. A bit of a new manager bounce might help them, but yeah, I won't hold my breath on that one because we'll be talking about that momentarily. So let's get into the games that we saw this weekend, Liam. You're going to run us through Grupo Uno first. If you want to take us through the top 5 to begin with and where are we picking up from the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously had a show last week, didn't we? And the top 5 in Grupo Uno is the same as before. So Cultural Leonesia top, Ponferradina second, Gimnastic Tarragona are third. The only difference is that, actually, also I should mention the rest. I think that and Andorra are 4th and 5th. But it's more about the margins, isn't it, between these teams? Ponferrad cut the gap at the top to 5 points because they won dramatically against Zamora. That could be a massive turning point in the whole season. And they scored 2 goals in the last 11 minutes, having trailed 1-0 with, as I say, just deep in the second half. And Cultural Leonesa lost at Tarazona. So that gap, as I say, which looked a big gap at one stage, now down to 5 points. Real Sociedad played Andorra and beat them. So they obviously extended the gap between themselves and Andorra. But I think more importantly, Nick, they're now 5 points clear of 6th place Ourense, who drew. So that's a little bit of a buffer in terms of staying in the playoff places. And then the bottom 5, we were very pleased when we see Real Union win 3-0 against Lugo, and that took them out of the bottom 5, but pushed Lugo into it. The other 4 teams in the relegation zone are all the same. Sestao, Rival Club, Gimnástica Segoviana, Barça Athletic, and Amorebieta. And although this weekend Barça Athletic did beat Sestao, they are still 7 points adrift of safety. Now, Nick, last week you said that Cultural Leonesa were looking pretty much home and hose for that place in Segunda next season. 7 days on, Nick, are you still feeling as confident about their chances?
I think I don't know whether they were beer glasses or Roja tinted glasses, but I'm looking at that table now and I'm thinking maybe I called that one a bit too early because you look at the position that Cultural are in. Obviously, that 1 win in 5 being quite important to the story here. But the way that Ponfe and Nastic are going about their business, and the fact that Cultural have got to play them both in these last few games, is making me a little bit nervous about whether actually they can get this job done now, because I believe it's next weekend they've got Nastic at home. And if a result goes away against them there, we could be talking about a completely different scenario. And I think when you've spent that long at the top of the league and you do drop into playoffs, it's quite difficult to mentally bounce back, in my opinion.
Yeah, very much so, and history tells us that happens repeatedly, doesn't it? If you are in the automatic places and then late in the season you get overtaken, then yeah, it's very, it's not unusual, I would say, but it's relatively unusual, I think, that teams still go up via the playoffs. And I think we're looking here at momentum, aren't we? I think it might be 1 win in 6 now, that they've chalked up, and that was in the 88th minute, although they do specialise in late goals, so it wasn't a convincing victory the weekend before last. The problem for them is just that they haven't been here before, have they, Nick? This is a big city, Leon, but Cultural Leonesa haven't spent many of those recent years. In fact, their history is more at Primera RFEF and below, and Ponferradina are coming up fast behind them. They're a side that's played in a Segunda for a number of seasons, and they've also been promoted from Primera RFEF. So they know what it's about. I'm not saying it's the same set of players, but they know what it's about. They know how to get it done. They play Osasuna Promesas this week. You wouldn't put it beyond Nastic, who've also got an outside chance of catching Cultural Leonesa to go and win in Leon. And then all of a sudden, Osasuna Promesas are not exactly tearing up this year. Ponfe could be 2 points behind by the end of this coming match day. So yeah, suddenly it is looking different. I don't know if it was the beer or the vino tinto, but yeah, it looks like that might have been a slightly a previous prediction from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like you say there, when you look at some of the when you actually look at the running for all those 3 sides, I think Cultural have got the less favoured one, so to speak. Like say Ponfe have got a couple of games up against Filiales and teams down at the bottom, so I think they could be confident. And as you said, Liam, they've got that job done before. They were in the playoffs last season as well, so they'll want to go one better. Same with Nastic too. These are 2 clubs with high ambitions to be in Segunda next season and beyond as well. So it'd be very interesting what we're talking about maybe in 1 or 2 weeks' time when we're back to discuss the league table in Grupo Uno.
Yeah, I suppose as well, you look at the goal they conceded to lose that game as well this weekend, Cultural Leonesa. Just a dreadful mix-up between a defender who ran into the goalkeeper, ball runs loose, and Luis Rivas taps it in for Tarazona. And, again, they had, I think, nearly an hour to get back in that game and couldn't find a goal. So they're not in a good place. They need to lift themselves. I think it'll be a big crowd this week in the Reino de Leon, and they really need a big performance from their players, don't they? They have been very good at home generally, but they need one this weekend. Now, in terms of that top 5, Nick, we've just got, I think, 6 hours to go. Can you see any sides dropping out of it or anyone breaking into it? Because I was looking at it earlier today, and it struck me. We always say that there's not much of a mid-table in Primera RFEF. There are 5 teams, Nick, within 3 points of 5th place Andorra, and there's actually only 8 points between Andorra in 5th and 16th place, which is Lugo. It's absolutely insane, isn't it? We've got literally 10 around teams separated by 8 points. So is there anyone you think they don't even need to make a massive late run, do they? Just a reasonable late run, and maybe they'll go a bit off the rails and somebody else gets in there. Is there anybody you got your money on?
They do. Obviously, I know we've spoke about the form of Orense as of late, and obviously the story they have, and they probably still be my outside chance to catch up with Andorra in that, because Andorra's form, as much as they're in the playoff positions, it isn't great. But it's Celta Fortuna, the team at the minute, which are in form. As much as we would be, remiss to discuss, we could end up with 2 filiales in this playoff picture, because if Celta Fortuna keep up this form, they don't look like they want to stop winning at the moment. And, they're only points off Andorra at the moment in that league. So, I'd be betting on them. Heart-wise, though, says Baracaldo. Heart says Baracaldo, if I'm being perfectly honest. I'd love to see them reach the playoffs this season, given that they've been up there since day one. It'd be a shame for them to miss out.
Yeah, they're not performing. That's the problem with Baracaldo. They're not in a good place. Not a good time to be momentum at this stage, don't you? But they've just kind of hit the skids a bit recently. So yeah, I would like to see them back in there, but I'm not confident that they will. In terms of the bottom, Amorebieta, Barça Athletic. I mean, I know Barça Athletic won at the weekend, but I think both of those two have probably still got too much to do to escape the relegation trapdoor. But can you see any other sides getting out of trouble there? I mean, it's interesting that Lugo, again, look at Lugo. 2-3 weeks ago, they won 3 in a row, 3 in a week, and some sort of about 4 or 5 points off the top 5. And as we were saying, there's just so little difference between a good season and a bad season at this stage. They're now in the bottom 5. Are they going to get out of there? And if they do, who is going to fall in their place, do you think?
I really can't put my finger on it on who's going to go down here at the moment in Group 1 because it's so interchanging. As you said, there's people that have been up near the playoffs that have suddenly found themselves in the bottom 5, like Lugo. Sestao, obviously, we've got quite an affinity for them at the moment. We thought they could be easily looking at climbing themselves out given the results that they've had, but they've taken a bit of a setback as well. It's a shame, really, because I'm looking at the league table. I'm thinking, well, in my world, I'd love to obviously see as many of these B teams drop out of it so we can have some more, so to speak, proper football teams in this league for us to talk about on a weekly basis. But there's only really Osasuna Promesas, which is under threat at the moment. I think the other two are well and clear of it, unfortunately, and Real Sociedad B are in no chance of getting sucked into it. So, for me, unless Unionistas turn things around, I think they're in massive danger of getting sucked into it. I think Arentero is also a team that really need to get their act together, which is interesting again because they play each other this Friday. There isn't anyone you could say up until mid-table that are currently guaranteed safety, if I'm being perfectly honest.
No, you're right. It is so tight, isn't it? I'm really not sure either how it's going to pan out. Although, like you, as you know, and I'm very keen for Sestao Liverpool to climb out of trouble. And if they were to be replaced by Osasuna Promesas, I would not be desperately disappointed, as you know. Grupo Dos. Let's move on to Grupo Dos, shall we? Tell us a bit about the top 5, Nick, in Grupo Dos.
Yes, so in the top 5, it hasn't really changed too much since the last time we spoke, Liam. But maybe the winners of the weekend for this would be Antequera, who do climb within 1 point of the top spot, which is currently occupied by Ceuta. They beat Intercity away by 1-0. At the top, though, obviously, you've already mentioned the game of the weekend was always going to be Real Murcia and against Ceuta. They played out that 1-1 draw, which basically does nothing for either team. But the fact that we've got this, three-way fight, this three-way battle at the top is really, really interesting. Merida, as we've discussed, obviously, is there such a thing as a new owner bounce? Maybe that'd be quite interesting to see whether they get themselves into the title chase. Even don't discount it the way that these teams are playing at the moment. Ibiza is the one that I feel for at the moment because obviously they lost this weekend against Marbella. Obviously helps Marbella jump out the relegation zone. Again, really tight down there towards that bottom 5, but there's just something not quite right with Paco Gemmas' side at the moment. Considering a few weeks ago they'd won 6 on the bounce, they were looking like they were going to run away with this league, and it was up to everybody else to fight the rest of it out. They're now in danger of dropping out of the playoffs for me, and there is a queue, and I mean a queue for these playoff positions in Grupo Dos as well.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's. I think it was 7 in a row. I checked again, because I know they won 6, and then I think they added 1 more to it after that, and then I don't think they've won since. So they really are, struggling. It's boom and bust with them, isn't it? Really, they've got a good squad of players there, but yeah, they do look in real danger, and there are a number of sides coming up right behind them. So we'll see how that develops. How about the bottom 5? You mentioned that Marbella are out of the bottom 5 thanks to that win against Ibiza. Who else is in the bottom 5?
So at the moment, it is Marbella who really benefited from that. I want to say surprise win, but nothing really surprises me in Primera RFEF at the moment. But it is unfortunately, yours and my favourites, Recreativo Huelva and Yeclano Deportivo, which are currently down there. Atlético Sanllequeño with those lovely floodlights are also down there as well, and the aforementioned Alcoy and Intercity are bottom as well, and probably looking like it may be a bit of a bridge too far for Intercity to survive so far for the rest of the season, given it's 9 points from safety now, and they've lost the last 3 on the bounce. Maybe this furore around the stadium decision has been too much of an off-field distraction to really get them up and running again, Liam. But as we mentioned, the battle of the weekend was definitely in Murcia, not in Alicante, but in the capital of. Tell us a bit more about the game at Nueva Condomina, if that sounds okay to you, Liam.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is amazing, wasn't it? Nearly 30,000 people were building up all week, weren't they? They started off, they said, I said they might get 30,000 or near to it. And then it was 20, 22, 24, 27. I was like, this is incredible. So yeah, just under 30,000. That is higher than any Segunda crowd this season. Even Malaga haven't managed to get as many in their stadium this year, Nick. So yeah, tremendous stuff. And we had this classic La Ley del X, didn't we? Where this basically translates as players scoring against their former club. The law of the X, they call it in Spain, and it means that a player leaves a club and then goes back and scores again. Somebody struck again in this one, and it was a spectacular goal from Rodri Rios. Interesting, he didn't celebrate. I seem to remember he left Real Murcia under a bit of a cloud to go to Ceuta, but still was respectful and didn't celebrate as he might have been tempted to do. I thought it was a really good game. And sometimes you see these massive games, don't you? And they kind of a bit of a damp squibs, really, aren't they? I don't know what Ruby made of it while she was watching Princess Diaries. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought Ceuta were going to win it. I have to say, it ebbed and flowed, but I thought Ceuta were going to hang on and win it. And then we had a pretty uncharacteristic error just in the last 10 minutes, didn't we, from their keeper, Guille Viejo. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a pretty innocuous ball over the top from Real Murcia, and as you say, Liam, I agree with you entirely that for the most part of this game, I thought Ceuta had this, but in those final 20 minutes, maybe that will of the crowd sort of like pushed Real Murcia onto another level because he just kept knocking the ball up, and here you've got Vallejo, he's just committed himself to go and collect the ball, and you're thinking, right, Rosed, kick it out, you're doing your team a favour, and he kind of just like, I want to say thrusts. Is thrust the right word? He kind of like thrusts at the ball.
He chests it down, doesn't he? He chests it. Yeah. I mean, exactly. Yeah, but just boot it. What are you doing? Why are you trying to dribble around the guy when you're 45 yards out of your goal? Just get rid of it. Extraordinary decision. Yeah.
It was absolutely mad, and like you say, the beneficiary of that was Flacos, who then can't believe his luck. And to be fair, the job isn't done from his perspective. He's not 10 yards out when this happens. He's the best part of 35 to 40 yards out when this occurs. So he's got to hit the target, but he does, just plays it along the ground, and eventually it does hit the back of the goal. And I'm looking at this thinking, how has that even come about? Like, if there's errors that are going to cost you the league title and potentially promotion, I think if that does happen for Sage, that will be the moment where they go, that's where our season messed up. And just a complete heads gone moment from the goalkeeper in this one that's cost them 2 points.
Very much so. I mean, I suppose their only consolation was that they equalled a record of 19 unbeaten games in Primera RFEF, which we've mentioned before. We mentioned that Racing de Santander hold that record. I think Depor have also managed the same 19 games unbeaten. So if they would don't lose to Marbella this weekend on home soil, then they will break that record. And they do still look a very good bet to finish in at least the playoff positions, don't they? And they also, I think Real Murcia would also feel pretty confident they're going to be top 5 at least. But, the prize for them is clearly, automatic promotion. Favourites missed out last year in the playoffs, and they won't win the playoffs again. Real Murcia desperate to get back to Segunda. They've been out of it for too long now. Which one of those two is going to win it, in your opinion? Or do you think that they'll spend so much time looking at each other that Antequera might just nip in and beat both of them?
That certainly seems to be the way things look at the minute. Antequera just slowly going about their business, and they've not been explosive, but they've been picking up wins. They've got 2 wins in a row now. Admittedly, against Intercity being bottom of the league is maybe a bit of a gimme. But, they're looking at that thinking, we're a point off now. All the focus is on those two that have got, a requirement to be in Segunda. That's probably the way I would describe it. Both Ceuta and Real Murcia know they want to be in there. I think Antequera, if we're going to talk about it completely practically and honestly, will be surprised that they're third this point in the season and actually probably look at it and go, well, we're building. And if we get promoted, what a bonus, what a surprise. So I just think they need to go about their business. And, given the run-ins that all 3 of these teams have got, it wouldn't surprise me if Antequera do potentially usurp both of them, and both Ceuta and Real Murcia end up in the playoffs. But that'll be something that does come back to bite them when they go on a 6-game losing streak now.
It's a tough one to call, isn't it? They did have quite a poor run, and then of course they beat Hércules, the game that I saw, the 7-goal thriller, and then gritty result, not a great performance away into City, but as you say, they won the last 2, and then they're right in the thick of it. You did mention earlier on, and I totally agree with you that Merida are not out of that race just yet. They obviously are not very good away from home. That's their biggest problem. They're one of the weakest sides on the road in the division. Very strong on their own patch, but not very good at home. Ibiza, I don't know, where they did win 7 in a row before. Could they win another 6 in a row here? If they did, they'd probably end up being champions, wouldn't they? It would be very Paco Gémez if they won 7, didn't win for 5, and then won the last 6. They've got experienced players. A slight parallel between them and Almeria, who are slightly off the pace now and so on. But at one stage, it looked like they were the kind of squad that could just go and steamroll everybody if they needed to and come from way back to win it. I don't know. My biggest concern, Nick, is that if I look at those teams, you said they're queuing up to get into the playoffs. The teams that are queuing up to get into the playoffs are filiales, aren't they? Sevilla, Atletico, and both Madrid B teams, both Real Madrid Castilla and Atletico Madrid B. So I'm kind of hoping that Ibiza hang on in there, unless, of course, Algeciras come roaring past them all into the top 5. I would take that, wouldn't you?
I really would at the minute. And again, there's no looking like stopping them at the moment. Like you say, I thought it would be a tougher game at the weekend for them, with Alcoy turning up on the south coast and the form that they had, and they just brushed them aside. They made it look easy. You know what I mean? I thought it'd be a much more tighter game that way. And given their form and the fact that they're only the best part 6 points off Merida in 5th, and given the form of Ibiza, could they jump all over those filial sides? Not forgetting Hercules as well. It'd be interesting to see whether they can, maybe put a bit of a run together. Only 1 win in the last 5. Probably would say they won't. But again, that'd be a great club that I'd rather see in there rather than, Sevilla, Atletico Sevilla, Atleti B, Castilla, who seemingly don't want to win or lose games at the minute. I think they've got some mad run at the minute where they've just drawn every game for the last 5 or 6. So it's interesting. It's going to be in the hands of the teams that are currently in the playoffs, which is more important. So Paco Gémez really needs to get his act together and start his team to pick up points in this scenario.
Very much so. At the bottom, we've come really clear, haven't we? We've nailed our colours to the mast, I think, in every single episode that we want Recre and Yeclana to stay up. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because the gap is bigger in this league. I think it's something like 14 points between 5th and 16, only 9 in the league. It means that there aren't so many teams to scramble ahead of, are they, really? And that's the big concern for me, is that I'd obviously love them both to stay up, but I'm not sure who they're going to overtake to make that happen.
Yeah, you have a bit more of a chasm here when you talk about 2-game turnaround, for example. You look at Yeclano and Atlético Sanluqueño all on 35 points respectively. Same with Recreativo Huelva as well. But you look at Betis Deportivo and Alcorcón in 12th and 13th. They've got a 6-point gap, which is usually quite comfortable territory for them, especially considering that they're winning games as well and will continue to widen that gap should they go for there. So the sad thing would be for me is that there's only really 3 places that can be taken out of it. And there's at least 2 or 3 teams I'd like to stay in this league, if I'm being perfectly honest. And, you've mentioned 2 of them, and it'd be a real coin toss for me between Marbella and Atlético Sanluqueño. But I'd be more leaning towards the side from Sanlúcar to stay in this league as well over Marbella, if I'm being perfectly honest. But we
need to lose. I much as you don't want to upset any fans, but for Yeclana to survive, for Recre to survive, for possibly Atlético Sanluqueño to survive as well, you probably need to lose Marbella, Fuenlabrada, and also Villarreal B. And I just don't see that happening. And Yeclana will be gutted with the result this weekend and the way the game panned out. They're playing against 10. I see Pablo Garcia's free kick has made it into the sort of top 4 goals of the week that the Primera Federación choose. And I'm irritated by how he got that free kick. Of course, that isn't included in the highlights, and the great goal is the only thing that's mentioned. He's 1-on-1 with the last defender. There's a bit of a scuffle, and he basically hooks his leg inside the Yeclana defender's leg and then just basically falls over. A great place to get a free kick. The Yeclana defender is absolutely apoplectic. Garcia knocks it in the corner. Unfortunate. That was about the 88th minute. That would have been 3 points, and that would have been a massive win for them because they've only won 1 of the last 14. Nick, and they don't have very many goal scorers in there. 6 top goal scorers have got 3 each. You look at Marbella, they've got Callejon, he's got 9. This guy Tahiri Awudu, who scored 2 this weekend, 4 in his last 4. I'm not saying it's all. I mean, you could say, well, you kind of share their goals around, but you need somebody, don't you? If you can get sort of 10 to 15 goals. It's a massive help if you've got that, and they aren't going to have that, between now and the end of the season. And Rekra, who also want to stay up, ultimately 2 wins in the last 12. They haven't scored in 7 of the other 10. They're struggling for goals as well. I do worry that at least one of them will go down. I hope I'm wrong. And you have mentioned, as you say, some teams that you'd like to go down. Any particular, would you like to, I've mentioned Fuenlabrada and Marbella and Villarreal. Would you like to have any thoughts on those in terms of them replacing Recre and Yeclano?
Get them down. For me, I know that obviously there is a thought process behind this where you're saying, well, at least if they're in Primera, they're not necessarily going to be affecting the Segunda, where it's even harder for those smaller clubs to thrive if there's B teams in there. But, in an ideal world for me, if Villarreal B and Betis Deportivo can get sucked in, even Real Madrid Castilla as well, bugger it, let's bring them all in. If some of these teams can go on some mad runs maybe and get themselves a shot at survival, then I prefer it to be that way. Would I be sad if Fuenlabrada went down? Probably not. I don't know. Just something about them irks me. I don't know why. I don't know if it's. I cannot put my finger on why. I'm not a huge fan of the team that play at the Fernando Torres Stadium. It's just not a bit of me, unfortunately.
No, so we're probably agreed that as long as Lecano and Recre survive, we're not too bothered about who else goes down. Although we'd like Atletico San and Kenya to survive as well. I agree with that. I think it would be sad to lose them. Our stunning goals, awful misses, goal kicking, howlers section, Nick, and anything you want to mention in this section. You're not allowed to mention that Garcia goal, that free kick for Betis Deportivo, because it was achieved by unfair means. But go ahead and mention any of the goals that caught your eye.
It was. I suppose I'll go back to the one that we both pointed out in our respective group chats and things like that, is that the Yeclano goal that was scored by them to begin with, that sort of like looping header, which you always love to see, that completely wrong foots a goalkeeper, is always a nice one. I suppose howlers-wise, I turn again to the little town of Alcoy. Mario Lasada, who popped up quite early doors at the back post against Fuenlabrada. So it's a really good ball in, and he's found himself in acres of space, but he's just not managed to make the right connection, and he completely spoons this one into, I assume, somebody's back garden, because it's not a massively tall stand behind the goal there in Alcoy. And he'll be very remiss there, because again, if they get that goal, I know they took the lead in this game anyway, but it could have been a real shot in the arm for Alcoyano in their fight for survival, if I'm being perfectly honest.
He did score a half decent goal as well, didn't he? But I think the only point about that was that I felt, although it flew in from about 25 yards, it went almost down the middle of the goal, and the keeper just stood and watched. I was like, are you going to dive or not? So I think that one has also made it into the goal of the week. I don't think there were many stunning goals this week, so that might explain why both of those goals made it into the 4 that you can select from on the Primera Federación Twitter account. But yeah, he should have put that one away. He was desperate, wasn't it? I don't like to pick out keepers. I have once or twice mentioned in the first 4 episodes, but Unai Perez of Baracaldo had a really bad night at the office Saturday night. That was in also in Pamplona and at Tajonar, the training ground of Osasuna. Just 2 really bad mistakes came flying. It was goal a little bit like Vallejo in Murcia. Perhaps it was something in the air that night, and that was a Saturday night game as well, wasn't it? Real Murcia Ceuta flew out his goal, completely got his angles wrong, where it was rounded, and the guy scored from out on the right-hand side. And then the second goal, it was inside the box. He did the same thing, flew out his goal. On both occasions, there was a defender covering pretty well. Again, he got his angles wrong. Again, he made the wrong decision. And second goal for Osasuna Palacios, and that was it. I think when your team is struggling, you do not need the keeper to make 2 really bad errors like that. And Baracaldo must have been cursing themselves after that one, because they went home pointless. And as I say, we'd like them to get in the playoffs, but right now, their form doesn't suggest they're going to make it. So enough about the past. Let's talk about the future, Nick. Do you want to talk about Grupo Uno? Games of the week in Grupo Uno in match day, what is it, 33, is it? Yeah, 33.
33, yeah. Yeah, I get the pleasure of doing Grupo Uno this week, and I'm going for a game a day. It is the Easter weekend, and we've got an extended weekend to go for, so I'm going to fill it with watching Primera football. Friday night, I'm going to go with one for the purists, let's put it this way, Unionistas versus Arentero. It is, in fact, Mrs. Bell's birthday, if I'm being perfectly honest. So this might be a Saturday morning watch, but we'll see. We'll see.
Seriously telling it, Mrs. Bell doesn't want to watch Unionistas versus Arentero. Have you consulted a good lawyer recently, Nick? This is appalling. I can't imagine. I mean, my wife would absolutely be massively up for that kind of a birthday treat, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think when she refers to herself as a football widow, it wouldn't inspire me with confidence to say that she's up for watching a not the most exciting game. As I mentioned, this is one for the purists, but Unionistas against Arentero. These are sides both in bad form at the moment, so I'm not expecting a classic, and they are both in danger of getting, as we've mentioned, sucked into that relegation zone at the weekend. But Unionistas will be hoping that new manager bounce finally does kick in, as Jose Asieri tasted defeat last time out against Nastic, so they'll be looking maybe towards fighting a team in a similar situation to pick up 3 points and edge themselves out of danger there. But Arentero would tell you exactly the same, that they have hopes of staying in this league and would hope to take advantage of maybe some turmoil in Salamanca at the moment. On Saturday, there's a North Bilbao derby between neighbouring barrios Baracaldo and Sestao. If both teams could pick up 3 points in this one, I'd be a very happy man. But unfortunately, that's not how football works. So for me, that they'll both want them for different reasons, as we said. Sestao, who will be hoping to, again, stay in Primera, get back into form and want to get back into the run of getting themselves away from that relegation zone if they can. And as you just mentioned, Liam, Baracaldo, who are bang out of form at the moment, will be hoping to kickstart that again, get themselves back in that playoff chase where they've been all season, and, get themselves in the mix with Celta Fortuna, with Orense, with Bilbao Athletic for that final playoff spot where he's currently occupied by Andorra. But there's only one top of the billing, isn't this weekend, really, Liam? And we've mentioned it already. It is Cultural Leonesa against Gimnastic de Tarragona on Easter Sunday. So a massive day, which will hold more significance for those fans, not just because it's Easter Sunday, but also because of this massive game in Leon. As we've mentioned, we thought this was Cultural getting things wrapped up. But, if things don't go their way this weekend, it could let Ponfe in, who have got a seemingly easier opposition. They could be back within 2 points, and Nastic themselves with a win here could be within 4 points of top. It could not turn out to be a great weekend for the home side. How about Grupo Dos?
That's definitely one, and I will be glued to. I have to say, it really is interesting, isn't it? And I think Gimnastic have not been another side that's very, very strong at home, not as good on their travels. I think last time out they lost away at Sestao, didn't they? But they've had 2 thumping victories at home: 5-1 against Ponferradina, 4-0 against Unionistas last week, and they just need to take some of that free scoring form on the road for this massive game. It should be a really, really good game. Grupo Dos. I never like to include filiales in my games of the week, but Ibiza against Sevilla Atletico is a big game. It's one that, obviously, as we've said, Paco Gémez has to try and get this team turning the corner sooner rather than later. If Sevilla Atletico go to the island and win, they will go in the top 5. They will knock Ibiza out of the top 5. Bebe needs to get firing again, as the rest of his teammates. And we also mentioned about Antequera possibly sneaking up unnoticed and going past the 2 sides in currently in pole position for that automatic place in Grupo Dos. And here's a classic example this weekend: Alcoy Real Murcia. That's a really tough place to go at the moment. It's always tough to go to Alcoy, to be fair, but they are in decent form despite that win last week. The defeat last week in Algeciras, and they need to win this game, Alcoy, because they're just on the very outskirts of the possibility of getting that top 5. So it's a must win for them, and Real Murcia, they know the field are playing Marbella, they know Antequera playing Yeclano Deportivo, so it's a tough one for them. They've got to be thinking they need to win it because the other 2 are probably going to win. And then my third game is those boys from Algeciras again. It's an Andalusian derby against Atlético Sanluqueño. And 5th win in 6 it will be for Algeciras if they can win that. And you mentioned they're only 6 points off the playoffs. If they win this one, then they would be surely banging the picture from a side that was, literally in the relegation places a month ago. Incredible turnaround for them. Atletico San Luqueño, I think they won the first game on the road back in August against Atletico de Madrid B. They've only beaten the bottom two, Intercity and Alcoy, on their travels since then. But they have the incentive of knowing that winning this one will probably take them out of the bottom five. So that is a big game as well. So 3 really, really big games in both groups. I think, as you say, the pick of them though has to be in Grupo Uno, the Cultural Leonesa clash with Gimnàstic de Tarragona.
Yes, absolutely. I think, like you say, if you've got some time this weekend to watch any of those games, you'll be in for a real treat, as we really do hit the running, so to speak, Liam. Because, like you say, there's going to be some big decisions made, and I'm with you for that one. I think with Real Murcia there, given what we saw in that game against Ceuta on the weekend, you wouldn't put it past Alcorcón giving them a bit of a bloody nose, would you, at home? And Alcorcón with it all to play for as well. So, yeah, much excitement in Grupo Dos as there is in Grupo Uno as well. I suppose finally, Liam, we've been conversing these last few days about some of our favourite elements of Primera RF football, and one of those has been the kits. We've set ourselves a bit of a challenge to finish this episode on to basically pick out any shirts that we like, not including the Filiala shirts, because obviously that's, I want to say cheating, but they're also just quite boring, in my opinion. So if I was to put it your way, Liam, is there any shirts that you'd like to pick, or would you like me to give you mine first to maybe give you some inspiration?
I mean, I love my shirts, Nick, but I think you're just a notch above me. So I kind of feel like it would be wrong for me to go first on this topic. I feel you deserve to hold the floor initially.
Yes, and for those who aren't watching on YouTube, I'm actually sporting a Club Deportivo Ronda shirt for this episode, which is, again, very interesting and unique. But for me, if we're going to be picking on shirts, there is no finer shirt this season than the collaboration between Ceuta and Pompey. I can share a photo of this online for people who haven't seen it, but it is truly beautiful in that checkerboard, black and white colours of Ceuta, sashed in gold with a huge Ceuta sign across the middle of it, and it's really, truly beautiful. But I suppose if we were to be playing by the rules, which is technically that isn't their home kit, I'd have to go with Alcorcón. I know that might be controversial to listen to some, but I quite like Kappa kits, even though I can't fit in them anymore. But that color coordination between the yellow and the blue, the Kappa going down the sleeves is a really beautiful combination. And chef's kiss for that one. And honorable mentions for Unionistas de Salamanca's area home shirt and the Real Union Aston Villa inspired away kit as well, which is quite nice for an Adidas kit.
Yeah, I mean, you've already been told by me last week, haven't you, my thoughts on the Alcorcón kit. I'm actually wearing, if you're not watching this on YouTube, I'm actually wearing a Norwich City away kit from a few years ago in the kind of purple I want to see more of in Primera Federación, Nick, and that's why I put it on there. If there's anybody out there on YouTube watching this who's involved in selecting kits for next season, I don't think there's a single dark purple home, away, third kit in Primera Federación. That's a lot of kits without a single purple kit. The nearest any club comes to it, I think, is Alcorcón's away kit, but that's kind of a light purple. It's not quite what I was looking for, really. And again, the same problem with the enormous font, which I mentioned last week, which I don't like. But I do think, I do agree with you. I think the Celta kit is lovely. As you say, it's a special edition. I do really like the Unionistas home kit as well. And I would like to add to that this Sestao River Club home kit. Green and black stripes. Again, it's Adidas, isn't it, I think? And that's relatively unusual. I always like something unusual. I mean, not unusual when it's a horrible combination of colours, but green and black, you don't get that very often, do you, really? So green and black stripes, I think, is fairly niche. So I'm a big fan of that one as well.
No, well, I suppose if you can hold your breath until the Primera season kicks off next year, there is a side that's popping into league that does have a purple home kit. I don't know if it's as deep purple as you're wearing there, Liam, but more to be revealed about that one on a future episode. But yeah, like I say, and if I can get my hands on some of these Primera RF kits that add to the collection, I would be very grateful, because they're not easy to come by. I have eyed up this Ceuta Pompey special kit, and it does say it's available only in slim. And, I'm almost 35 now. I'm a parent. I have a job where I sit down a lot, and I don't know if £90 for a bit of self-indulgence is not what I want.
Well, not related to Primera RF, but the Cordoba away kit in Segunda this year is purple, and it caught my eye very much. Like, look at that. And I thought, yeah, let's go for a large. I'm usually large. I've got no problem with large. Macron kits, I can assure you, Nick, are slightly on the skinny side in terms of their sizings. It fits me, but you know what? It's yeah. I should have gone for extra large, basically. So yeah, there is always that problem, isn't there? But hopefully we'll manage to overcome that minefield and pick up a few Primera Federación kits before the end of the season.
Yes, absolutely. And I suppose we can start to wrap things up there, Liam. Obviously, we've got other podcasts that we do this week, namely Spanish Segunda for yourself. I know an episode came out earlier this week, but you'll have your preview later on in the week as well. Is there anything that we should be potentially looking out for as far as the Segunda game is concerned that you can recommend for me?
Yeah, it's like Primera RF. It's just so tight, isn't it? To be honest, there's so much going on at the moment. Every single week has some massive games in it, and Huesca and Mirandés were two of the sides that are unfancied, hanging on in there grimly to try and make it into the playoffs. And yeah, I mean, it's going to go down to the wire. Segunda, it's a fantastic league, as is Primera RF, obviously. And yeah, it's one to keep an eye on. Certainly, there'll be some decent games. Obviously, the added advantage of Primera RF, though, is if you're prepared to pay a fairly reasonable sum, you can watch all the games. Spanish Segunda does not offer you that option at all. You have to do the highlights. So, that's a bit of a down for me. But yeah, all the more time for me to spend at the weekends watching Primera RF games in their entireties. How about El Partido? What have you got lined up for this week?
Well, we're back this week after a week's hiatus. We didn't have an episode last week whilst I was on holiday. Maybe one could say I was more committed to El Pozo last week than I was to El Partido. But we've got a cool interview coming up this week, which we'll reveal more about on our social medias. There's also a back catalogue of timeless episodes you can go and listen to about Rafa Benitez Valencia, about our favourite Argentine footballers to have played in La Liga, and all sorts there as well. So yeah, go find us on there and have a little listen through. It won't outdate itself, which is always excellent news, and it's always lovely to speak to Paul as well about Spanish football too. So yeah, we'll be back again in about 2 weeks' time, Liam. We're going to watch some brilliant football this weekend over the Easter weekend. So I'll say gracias to all of you at home, and thanks for listening once again, and we'll see you very soon.
Hasta la próxima.